Okay, let's get into this. We are doing a deep dive into what I think is a really fascinating philosophical challenge posed by sound itself.
Hmm.
We're exploring ambient music, which
Mm.
is a genre that, it uniquely asks you not to listen to it,
Hmm.
at least not actively.
It's a complete paradox, isn't it? And that's really our mission for this deep dive. How do you even begin to talk about a genre that is, by its very nature, designed to be peripheral?
Exactly.
So we're going to be tracing the lineage of this spatial art, defined by its rejection of melody and rhythm, all the way from conceptual art
Right.
to its sort of radical fusion with the intellectual underground of 1990s UK electronic music.
And I think the core question we have to keep coming back to is, if the music is meant to be ignorable, then what is it actually for? What's its function? It feels less like composing and more like, I don't know, environmental engineering.
That is the perfect way to put it. We're looking
Yeah.
at function beyond just, performance or consumption. And
Mhm.
to get there, we have to start with the one single defining philosophical blueprint.
Okay, so this is where it all really comes together. I mean, sounds like this existed before, but it was the British musician Brian Eno who, in 1978, he explicitly defined and named the whole concept.
He did. He took all these existing threads from the experimental art world and just wove them into a genre you could actually name.
And his definition, it's really the anchor for this whole conversation. It comes from the sleeve notes of his album, Ambient 1, Music for Airports.
Yes, that's the one. He wrote that ambient music must be able to accommodate many levels of listening attention without enforcing one in particular.
And here's the killer line.
It must be as ignorable as it is interesting.
As ignorable as it is interesting. I love that phrase. But I have to admit, I struggle with the idea. I mean, if it's designed to be background, how is that different from, regular background music? UVAC.
That's the crucial misunderstanding, but it's a common one. Ambient might share that background space, but the intent is completely different.
Okay.
Music, elevator music, it's designed to fill a void and then disappear entirely. It's meant to be disposable.
Its whole goal is to not be noticed.
Precisely. Ambient, on the other hand, is what Dino called spatial art. It actually rewards you if you decide to focus. The textures, the subtle shifts, they're all there waiting for you.
Ah, so it's an active choice by the listener. You can ignore it or you can engage.
Exactly. It's not designed to be invisible. It's designed to be peripheral. It's waiting for you to notice it.
That makes more sense. Okay, so
Got it.
Eno nails it down in the 70s. But this whole idea of music for the environment has a much deeper and, frankly, stranger history.
Oh, it goes back over a century. It really proves that nothing in art just, appears in a vacuum. You find the first little seeds of this idea in the 19th century with the French composer Erik Satie.
Satie, right. He had that incredibly strange concept, musique d'ameublement, which is furniture music.
Literally furniture music. Satie's idea was that this music should function just like a piece of furniture, a chair, a table. It's just supposed to be in the room.
Not listened to.
Not at all. He supposedly performed it once and told the audience, don't listen, walk about, talk, pay no attention.
That sounds like an amazing piece of performance art.
Yeah.
But was he being serious or was it a joke? A stab at the seriousness of classical concerts?
The sources say it was a bit of both. It was definitely a radical idea, this challenge to the notion that music demands your silent, undivided attention. It laid the groundwork.
And from Satie, you get this path to the ultimate challenge to musical structure. The idea that maybe the environment itself is the composition.
Which was fully realized, of course, by the avant-garde composer John Cage. And the quintessential example, the one everyone knows, is his piece 4 Foot 33.
4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence.
Well, silence. What Cage did was shift the focus. By taking away the composer's notes, he forced the audience to listen to the room.
The coughs, the shuffling feet, the hum of the lights.
All of it. That becomes the performance. Cage's argument was that the sound of the world, if you just frame it, is inherently musical.
So you have Satie making music fade into the background, Cage removing it entirely to highlight the background. And then Eno comes along in the 70s and uses modern studio tech to actually build something from those ideas.
Exactly. His works like discrete music and, of course, music for airports use tape loops and early synthesizers to create these perpetual, non-linear pieces. He was designing for the feeling of alienation in a modern airport terminal.
So let's talk about the sound itself. What are the building blocks, the actual architecture of ambient that Eno established?
First, melody is minimal. It's often just these sustained chords or drones. The goal is a floating, almost static feeling. There's no hurry.
And rhythm is basically gone. Or if it's there, it's so slow or so subtle that you wouldn't really notice it as a beat. It's not for dancing.
No. And that feeds into the structure. An ambient track doesn't really have a beginning, a middle, or an end. You can just drop in at any point. The timeline is ambiguous.
So how do they get that floaty spatial feel? Technically, what's going on?
It's all about sound spatialization. Heavy, heavy use of effects like reverb and delay. The goal is to make the sound feel three-dimensional, like it's actually filling the physical space around you, creating a sense of depth and distance.
And once that foundation was laid, it was just, I guess, inevitable that it would merge with the world of electronic music production, which was just exploding at the time.
Absolutely. Through the 80s and early 90s, the genre fused with all these pioneering electronic sounds. You think of the German scene, Tangerine Dream,
Yeah.
Schultz.
Right, the Berlin School.
Exactly. And that marriage gave birth to subgenres like ambient house and, crucially for our story, ambient techno.
And this merger really proved ambient wasn't just one mood. It was a whole set of tools you could apply to anything.
Yeah.
And the spectrum of sound got huge.
Oh, the extremes are vast. On one end, you get dark ambient. It uses the same drones in space, but to create tension, dread, really unsettling stuff. Artists like Lustmord.
Yeah, it's the sound of a huge, empty, and possibly dangerous space.
Then on the other side, you have something deeply introspective, like ambient drone. Artists like William Basinski, who focus on these tiny, tiny fluctuations in a sound over a very long time. It demands deep listening.
And then there's the one most people probably know today, the whole new age or chill out side of things.
Right, which is ambient designed specifically for relaxation, for meditation. People like Laraji, who Eno actually produced, or the huge global sound of someone like Enya. The building blocks are the same, but the intent is totally different.
But the truly radical mutation, and the one our sources really focus on, was when this philosophy got absorbed into the aggressive framework of 1990s UK techno. This is where the Ignorable becomes an act of assertion.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. The UK electronic scene in the 90s was hungry for something more. There was a real push for music that had, thoughtfulness, that wasn't just simple commercial dance music.
And this led to the birth of what people started calling intelligent dance music, or IDM, which, for anyone unfamiliar, was basically a term that signaled this music was for more than just dancing. It prioritized complex sound design.
And ground zero for IDM was Warp Records up in Sheffield. They're often called the holy land of this stuff. They started with bleep techno, but quickly moved into really complex experimental sounds.
Fostering giants like Autechre.
Oh, absolutely. Autechre's early work, like Incunabula or Amber, was just so cerebral. They took ambient textures and injected these incredibly complex, sometimes broken-sounding rhythms. It was like an intellectual puzzle.
And it wasn't just them. You also had pioneers like the Black Dog, with their iconic 1993 album Bites. That album is like a foundational text for the whole genre.
It is. But the scene wasn't all just Warp's intellectual sound. You also had this harder, more industrial edge coming out of Birmingham, centered on the Downwards label.
A much more dystopian aesthetic sound.
Very much so. It drew from industrial and EBM electronic body music, so it was all about these hard, repetitive, metallic sounds. It was poetry made from the noise of industry.
Okay, so why? Why did this really intense, sometimes violent-sounding techno culture embrace the quiet philosophy of ambient?
Because of the context of the time. This wasn't just music for clubs, this was a social movement. It was tied to illegal raves, to this massive youth dissatisfaction in the post-Thatcher era.
Our sources call it a quiet and violent revolution. This music was being played in old warehouses, in fields. It was about sound physically occupying a space and challenging the social order.
And ambience techniques were the perfect tools for that. The sense of space, the texture, the non-linear feel. When you fuse that into a techno beat, you give the raw power a sense of depth, of thought.
It's the soul of the machine, like the sources say. The sound of a decaying urban world.
It's the silence between the chaos that gives the chaos its weight. The quiet, empty spaces taken from ambient philosophy made the powerful bits feel even more dense. It stopped the music from just being disposable party fuel. It was part of a conversation.
And if you look at today, ambient is, you could argue, more relevant than ever. It's just woven into our digital lives.
It's everywhere. Look at video game soundscapes. You're playing Silent Hill or Journey or something vast like No Man's Sky. The sound design gives you mood and immersion without distracting you.
It's spatial art for a digital space.
And then there's the whole wellness boom, obviously. ASMR. meditation apps, stress relief. It's all built on ambient principles. It's the soundtrack to modern work and relaxation, the lo-fi beats playlists that are everywhere.
Right.
And it still has this deep connection to other art forms. Its focus on silence, duration, negative space that links it directly to minimalism in architecture or art. Think of a Mark Rothko painting. It's about what is not there as much as what is.
And it still feels like the sound of the future. That slightly alienated, inorganic space of cyberpunk? You can't imagine a film like Blade Runner without that vast, echoing electronic soundscape.
Ultimately, that's what it is. It's an art form that deals with the transformation of air, of time, of consciousness. It's sound that's meant to be felt by the whole space, not just heard by your ears.
So we've gone from Satie's furniture music, through Eno's philosophy, all the way to the illegal warehouses of 90s Sheffield. It seems ambient is always about context, about space, and about challenging how we listen.
And that tension is the key. The legacy of that 90s UK scene was music played not just to dance, but, as they said, to assert its existence. Which leaves you with a really important question to think about.
What's that?
What does it mean that the music of assertion and rebellion, that hard UK techno, and the music of radical silence ambient are so deeply intertwined?
That's a great point. It suggests that maybe true rebellion isn't always about being loud. Sometimes the most powerful statement is found in the space between the notes.
Exactly. So we'd encourage you to go out and explore that periphery. Think about the difference between just hearing sound and actually experiencing a space. Go find the music that asks you to ignore it and see what happens when you don't.